Hello and welcome to Innovation Culture Coding Live. My name is Jens Heitland and I am your host. Today we're live from Spain. Zaragoza is the city where I'm in, and that's because I moved the last week from Germany to Spain. But that's not what this show is about. This show is all about engaging with innovators from around the world and highlighting the innovators who often are not seen. So I'm working with coaches and consultants who are awesome in what they are doing, and I want to highlight them a little bit. So I want to bring their authentic stories to life and show how they're engaging with the people and companies and how to help problem solving with their businesses. So you might hear a little bit background noise today, but that's the setting where I'm in right now. I'm at the client office and I have the opportunity to be in this awesome office, but there are people around, and in Spain we're not all quiet. So that's something we need to deal with, but that's when we're going live. And even if you're listening to this in the podcast later, that's how it is. So today's topic is innovation as a plateau booster, how to innovate through personal impact. And my guest of today's show is Doug Faulkner. Hello, Doug. How
Hey,
are you
Jens, lovely
doing?
to see you. I'm very, very well. I am in sunny Brighton, but I've managed to find myself a purpose-built podcasting booth in my current client's building. So completely soundproof, so I can scream and shout if I really want to.
That's awesome. Yeah, fun part. I mean, normally I have this setup where I always have my YouTube studio, as I said to you before. But today's it's natural sun here, so
Yeah,
it's not
yeah, yeah.
artificial light. It's
Okay, keep
crazy.
rubbing it in. Keep
Yeah,
rubbing it in. You're
sorry.
in Spain. Yeah, yeah, fine, fine. I like, and also because there's like palm trees behind you, it looks like you're on safari, like you're out
Yeah,
in the
I
field.
am. And I even dressed up in green today. So, but yeah, so awesome that you're there. Really, really looking forward to explore the case with you.
Same.
But before we go into the case, Doug, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you, and what are you doing?
Yeah, fabulous question. One of my favourite. I'm Doug Faulkner, and I am a performance coach. So from my perspective, what that means is I coach senior executives or business owners and leaders and entrepreneurs and smaller businesses on how to perform consistently at their best, regardless of what's going on in the world. And my specialist areas of support are innovation and personal impact. That's essentially it.
Awesome. I was still mute. So yeah, I wasn't live for a couple of weeks now. It's still early 2020 for me. So going a little bit deeper. So you're in Brighton in the UK, but before we went live, you said like you lived 5 minutes in the US. Tell us a little bit about yourself on that way.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. My cousin actually says that I seem to be one of those people that has a champagne life out of a lemonade budget, I come from quite a low economic background. My education wasn't fantastic. I'm an autodidact, so everything I know is through actual lived experience. And when I was younger, my mum married an American, and we moved out there just after I did my GCSEs. Now, in the UK, for those who don't know, GCSEs is the qualifications you do when you leave school, or you do them and then you leave school. And in the UK, we tend to finish school 16, 17. When I moved to America, I was like, well, I'll go to college because that's what everyone in the UK is doing. But they're like, oh, no, you need to stay to school till you're 18, and none of your transcripts are, relate. So you're going to
Oh,
have to do a year of school. So I did that senior year of high school, which was such a culture shock because all the movies, everyone was like, is it like the movies? And I'm like, yeah, it's exactly like that. And that's why it's a culture shock. On the days that the football team were playing, all the cheerleaders wore their uniform all day. And there were kids who could get extra credits. In America, they have a credit system where each class is worth a certain number of credits, blah, blah. And you could get credit for giving blood. You could get credit for being in the junior army. It was the craziest. And for a poor white boy from suburbia, it was the craziest experience. But I think ultimately those kind of paradigm shifting experiences are really good fertile ground to create a strong innovator. Would you not agree, Jens?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's always the non-usual background that creates innovators.
Yeah. Well, and then interestingly, when I first started in innovation, I was also running my own comedy night. And I was doing lots of comedy, and I wrote comedy for television for a short while. And that's actually what nudged me out of working for a business and made me launch myself out into the world independently. And I think there's a certain specific type of experiences that make you a comedian as well. And I always, and the same with innovation, you need to be knocked out of the normal way of thinking to force you to be adaptable. And that's what creates innovation. And for me, also a bit of comedy. And I like to bring both of those things into, I'm not spending my whole time with clients just laughing our asses off, but what we are doing is enjoying their process as much as
Yeah.
possible. It's easy then.
If we drill a little bit down on, so what are the main clients you work with? How do you help clients? What are you doing from that perspective?
Yeah, obviously, COVID has had a huge effect on the entire world, and I think there are some very hidden positives. But let's face it, no one wants to hear that right now because we're all licking our wounds. So my client base is slightly evolving and changing, etc., which is exactly as you'd expect it to. But at the moment, I think when it comes to senior executives that I coach, they tend to be in the financial world. And I tend to have mainly female clients. And I think potentially the reason for that is number one, because they are a very close network, and they support each other very well. And therefore, it's an easy marketing tool as far as I'm concerned. They talk about each other. I do an amazing job, and they tell each other, great, thank you very much. But also, I think because I come from an innovative point of view, women who are not necessarily treated as equals in that world, therefore have to be adaptable. It's another paradigm shifting kind of point of view. So they conceptualize what I'm talking about a lot quicker because they've needed to. And they have that space in their heads. It's less uncomfortable for them to go, oh yeah, I'm going to change my entire thinking about this and go at it from another angle. But then when it comes to actual small business support and real on the ground innovation work, I moved out of. I was living in East London, and I took the opportunity during lockdowns to get out of London because I wanted to be, I suppose, to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. But also, I recognised that I needed some more. To sound like a pretentious boob, I needed a bit more creative incubation time. I needed to isolate myself in order to really swim around in all that experience and make some decisions about where I wanted to focus that experience. So at the moment down here, I'm working with the Sussex Innovation Centre, which is where I'm at the moment, which is an amazing organisation that runs independently but is attached to the Sussex University. They support small businesses and innovation. I'm also working with small businesses in Brighton, and they're businesses who are successful, but they're trying to cope with this consistently changing situation, and that's the best time for innovation.
Yeah, agree, and I think that's a key point of, specifically with businesses who are well off and who are still successful, even through COVID situation, where the whole pandemic situation is not easy for a lot of businesses. It's often that companies are getting kind of like, yeah, we survived, so why should we innovate? And then it's especially in my experience, at least, this ones have to innovate.
Yeah, I mean, perfect. I'm almost 100% convinced you'll agree with me on this one. If every business understood the foundations of innovation, or even recognized how they're already innovating and shone a light on it, then a lot of businesses throughout lots of industries would not be as hard hit by the current situation. And I know that's easy for me to say, but it's essentially, in essence, it teaches you adaptability, and it creates cultures where people are constantly solution finding and building. And often the businesses that I think survive those situations are the ones that are used to and embrace and really like change.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So let's get into the case. So we have, let me just put it up here that I'm not saying anything stupid. So today's case is a design agency. So a design agency, to the topic we already discussed, a design agency that's fairly successful and has been successful and growing organically over the last years. They kind of reach a plateau, and that's kind of a comfort zone. Let's say it like this: they have reached a comfort zone, and they're looking into doing things differently, innovating themselves, but they're as well aware that they love their market, they're inside the market,
mm,
and they know and understand that it's through their employees that they're able to do things differently, and they need to bring them on board and keep them on board. But what they
yeah,
see as well is that the talent is moving, the talent is kind of
mm,
willing to take the next step. And so if they
mm,
don't do this, the talent will move on. So that's a little bit the situation. um
mm,
and of course they reach out to you and say, hey Doug, you're the
yeah,
innovator, you understand this, how can you help us? So that's
yeah,
is literally the starting point. So let's say you
yeah,
get the call. How
mm-hmm.
would you start? How would you how would you go about? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
they explain you the situation, how would you go about and saying like, how can you help them?
Well, let's start with the cool bit, because as like you, as a beacon of innovation, like a bubbling battery of innovation constantly. I don't wait for a call. That's not what I'm about. So I set up networking things. I go out, I talk to people. Whenever I talk to, I'm fascinated by people's businesses, because I've got a vested interest, because it all builds my awareness, and how different people attack different problems and stuff. All really, really interesting. So just in the nature of having conversations with people, I tend to realize that what I'm selling to people is something they don't realize they're starving for until they take a bite. So essentially, I just need to have those kind of. Do you ever find that as well?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So they feel that they're good, but they don't know what they're missing.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't go in on the hard sell. I can't go in
Yeah.
linear. And actually, I don't want to, because not everyone's going to have business for me. What I do is I chat to everyone informally, and in a really interested way. And then if I sniff out a brief, I'll tell them. And I think,
Mm.
not like I'm saying you've got a problem and I can help you. What I'm saying is I think that there's something in your business that I can help you with. Can we have a chat about that? That is essentially the call. Them saying yes is then the bit where that kind of answers your question. What I'll
Yeah.
then do is I will the way I'll do that is I'll send them just a few bullet pointed notes off the back of that chat and go, this is the chat we had. This is why I think there might be a space here to innovate, because it's an interesting proposition. You say if you're a sign maker, someone needs a sign, you make the sign. It's as simple as that. But what I'm saying to people is, if you've got a lack of sales, you go to a sales consultant or you get new salespeople. No one's saying, "Oh, we've got a lack of innovation." They're just not having that conversations with themselves very often. Excuse me. So what I'm doing is I'm listening out for it. Then I'm showing them some really clear bullet points about what I mean. Then I'll go in and just have. It's still an informal chat, but it's a chat that now has an agenda. And the agenda is for us to come together to have a little investigate and then decide, is this a piece of work that needs doing? Am I the right one to do it for them? And what does it look like? And what's it going to cost them in time and resource generally?
Yeah. What are the kind of people on the client side you are engaging with in this
Mm,
situation? Is it like C-suite, the innovation
mm,
director, or is it the CEO?
yeah, yeah. So I might not start off by talking to the CEO, but I'm not going to go forward unless I speak to the CEO.
Yeah.
Because there's absolutely no point creating a buzz and an energy around change if the person at the top isn't, number one, bought into it, and number two, going to defend that change and force it forward. The last thing you want is somebody to have that attitude of, "Oh, just go away and get it done," and then they block the change.
Yeah.
That's no, because
Yeah.
also their information, they're part of the brief. If I don't get a really strong idea of the brief from their perspective, I'm not really answering the brief.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
100%.
if and I
Sometimes
really
I'm
yeah
yeah, sorry for interrupting. I'm so
yeah
excited. So sometimes I'm even going so far that I'm asking the supervisory board members, because
yeah
sometimes they put in
yeah
a new CEO and the CEO should fix it or should try to
mm,
get the business to the next
yeah
level. But if it's not on board, or the investors, depending how big the company is, it's not going
yeah
to
yeah.
happen.
Yeah, listen, and a tool that I learned years ago was about it's like a listening matrix. And it's like, you get a piece of paper or you do it mentally and you think, what are the four areas that I need information on to make sure I've taken a complete brief. And a complete brief means one that I've stimulated their thinking in places that because they've come to me because they either or they're talking to me because they either don't know how to do what I do, or they don't have time to think about it. So when I get in front of them, I need to stimulate that thinking. The last thing I want is for me to answer the brief they've given me, for that only to be stimulation to the brief that they should have given me in the past. I'm going to just it's my job to help them do that piece of work. And one of the areas that I look at is allies and assassins. So I want to know who's going to be the allies to this and who are going to be the assassins. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this. Because we need to connect offline as well again, or online but
Yeah.
offline not live, because what I do is as well like a stakeholder mapping, which I call ecosystem mapping, where I exactly do the same, like looking into who are the people and how are they moving, what are their thoughts, and how are they involved in the whole game, if we call it game.
Exactly. And the next thing that I would do essentially within that conversation, so what I'm doing is I'm listening out, and if I've if I've written it down, I can see visually where their thinking is light, so I can maybe focus my conversation around it in that area, and try and build up a little bit. So that's kind of next thing. And then what I'm going to do again is I'm doing kind of like a diagnostic. So I'm listening out and I'm trying to think about how I'm going to reinterpret this information in a way that they are going to be able to understand clearly. And I'm owning my interpretation. And I'm saying, I'm sending you this so that we can make sure we're aligned around our interpretation. This is what I got out of that conversation. This is what I thought we thought about and talked about. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, to make sure that we're in the right place.
So you start off with starting the, like you said, informal chats, getting them into this, then understanding the brief, and then going into kind of alignment that all understand the same thing, if I understand you right.
Yeah, yes, exactly that. And then to build on that, the first thing that not everyone will buy it, and there's an output cost to that. But the next thing I'll do is I will try to speak to as many people in that business as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And I didn't used to charge for that. I 100% charge for it now because yes, it serves me massively, but that is a piece of work on its own, that diagnostic piece.
Yeah.
The questions that I ask, where that conversation goes, and I don't do a complicated report at the back of it. I don't reveal what individual people said. I might share quotes if they're comfortable with it, with the business leader or the problem owner. But what I'll go back to them with is, these are the areas we looked at. This is the kind of general response I got. These are my recommendations off the back of it.
For the two listeners who have never heard about this, can you give a reason why you do that?
Yeah, the reason I do that is because, a couple of reasons. The first reason is collaboration breeds buy-in. So whatever people collaborate on, they want to see survive and thrive. And the first part of collaboration is being heard. And also, I don't trust, and neither should you, that the higher ups have a really clear impression of what everybody else is doing. And the reason for that is that they might not be asking for people's opinions in a way that is, they might say it. They might say, I've got an open door policy, but does the organization have agency to be able to actually have influence and say something and be heard? You don't have to take on board what everybody says, but it's really useful if everyone feels heard in the organization. And also, I know a lot about innovation and I know how adaptable it is, but I don't know about their culture and how to adapt it to their culture. And also, they know the areas. They're going to tell me what the areas are to innovate around. 100%. They might not be aware of it, and everyone works in it. The finance department are going to have a slightly different take on it than the outfitters department or whichever department. But I need everyone's point of view, and I need to kind of get a general idea of what the conversation is. And also, because if any of that stuff when it is hopefully played back to the business, they'll hear their opinion. It might be articulated slightly differently, but they'll hear what they've said. And throughout the whole innovation process, you're constantly involving people and collaborating with them, so they understand that head of innovation is just head of facilitation for innovation. It's everybody's role to be the innovator.
Yeah. I can't agree more. And do you use any specific tools for that? Any documentation on the site which helps to for like the management or anyone to get it, or how do you do that?
So when I talk to the team, do you mean? Yeah, I obviously nowadays I might do it via Zoom. I recently, so for this particular case study, the majority of people I did it face to face, and then when I had to, I did it via Zoom. It needs to have more than one dimension, one way or another. I think you can do it. I think you can totally do it successfully via Zoom. But there's that oxytocin thing. Do you know what I mean? You just need to get in front of people sometimes.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
if I've got clients that are in another country, that's not going to be realistic. But if it's possible, I'm going to say, fly me over, get me in front of your people. Because also, if at any point I'm going to facilitate and those people are going to be involved, some of them, I need them to be bought into me. I don't need them to be like, oh, here we go. It's one of those innovation people. Do you know what I mean? I need them to kind of be, be involved.
Yeah, I can't agree more, because I did a research project a while ago, like a couple of years back, where we have been working for a jewelry company, and we did
Yeah.
this in Europe, and then we needed to support their US entity as well. And
Yeah.
then going to the US was an eye opener for us, because the business was different, the culture was different. So the solution we have had in mind didn't work. So it was good
Right.
that we did it before we even started to
Yeah.
figuring out what the solution is. It's
If you
so
think about
important.
you think about the design thinking process, rudimentary sense. Number one is research and insight work. That's what it is essentially. Now, just as a complete change of subject, my battery's being a bit weird. So if for any reason you lose me all of a sudden, I apologize, but I'm going to hang on for as absolutely long as I can.
Yeah, no worries. Worst case, we need to do a second half
Yeah.
one day. But
Exactly. Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, but in that context, yeah. So the research person, and I've already done it. I've just chatted to somebody. I've sniffed a brief. I've sniffed their briefs. That sounds disgusting. I've met with them. I've investigated that brief a bit more. Again, this is all research. I'm reading that person. Are they capable of change? Are they hungry for it? All that stuff that's useful later on. And then I've gone into their business and I've spoken to their people. Now, listen, if they're not going to let me speak to their people, and not everybody does, I still have to find a way to get as much of that learning as I can in a different way. And you can do it through Survey Monkeys and all that kind of stuff. But I'm a little bit, put my foot down a little bit about those things. And I've been taught very well by various mentors I've had in the past around innovation too. It will just shoot you in the foot later on if you don't do it.
Yeah, I agree. So then you understand that you bring all of this insight into what?
Yeah, good. That's a really good question. So, what part of that initial conversation, when I get them to buy into, obviously I've chatted to them, then I've come and met them with an agenda, then I've given them some recommendations, then I'll send them a proposal, and then the first job will be to speak to their team. And within that, I'll have an idea of how they want to receive that information, and I'll ask that question really simply: how would you like to receive this information? I'm not gonna. People waste so much time on fancy polished decks. It's like, if they need a fancy polished deck, fine. I can make that happen. They can pay for it. I can make that happen. Is that the best use of their and my time? Is that the quickest way to land the information? Probably not. I will always send people something to back up what I've said. But generally, I can just stick it in an email, to be honest with you, sometimes. Something easy for people to just find the email and refer back to it. I think that's a tool, essentially, isn't it? I think if they then obviously have to go and sell that into some higher ups, it might need some polish. But ultimately, I'm going to be speaking to those higher ups anyway at some point, or else I'm not working with them.
Yeah. So you bring this information back, and then do you then take it to the next level, where it's more about, okay, now we have kind of figured out a couple of the challenges, and how do we going about solving them, and then you help them with that, or how does that work?
So the great thing about doing that diagnostic piece is that it shows up. It separates the wheat from the chaff around what those areas of innovation are, and I will report that back to the problem owner, and then I'll say, so in my what's the word I just used? in the information that I said, proposal. In the proposal, I'll have said I think we should do a management training piece, and it will be this long, and it will cost this, and it will take this long, or whatever. Then I'll adapt it. Whatever is in the proposal, I need to stay at that budget because that's what's been agreed. So then I'm going to make suggestions. I can say, actually, off the back of that, I think we need to do, a full day group, a whole business idea generation day, and that's actually going to cost more. And they can say yes, and they can say no, and we can adapt it, figure out a way to make it happen. But then generally, but at that point, I'll know what my bits are working, and I'll always make sure that it's clear that I'm going to be coming back to them after every piece, and we're going to be reviewing how it's gone. It's why when some people, a client will come with a very linear piece of thinking, it's why I'm going to be chip away at them to see whether they have the capacity to be flexible around these things, and not everybody does, and that's okay. But then, we both know that innovation is important and useful everywhere. Not everyone's aware that they're doing it all the time, and even fewer people will have the capacity to be brave enough to go for it. But ultimately, it's the thing that drives business.
So if I understand you right, then you're taking all of these insights, putting it into the proposal, and then there will be different activities, let's say streams or whatever, on this are the different things we're setting in motion to make this happen. And are you then facilitating these things, or do you help the organization to do it themselves? How do you do that?
That's such a good question. At the beginning of my innovation career, especially around training, a lot of what I did was, instead of being the actual trainer, I was the living embodiment of what it looked like. So I was leading by example. So throughout the whole process, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking, be the energy you want to see. And I'm not, I don't mean I'm like bursting in and being all high-fiving and happy clapping. I need to make sure that it's not jarring, and that it's, something that's entertaining and engaging, but not distracting or irritating, because that would be even worse. But what I've got an eye on, I'll always facilitate it. But what I've got an eye on is creating, making them independent, not dependent. I don't want to create a dependency. I want to create an independency. So I'm always trying to work with either the problem owner or the business leader in a coaching capacity. I'll look out for and pick members of their team who I think have this kind of natural understanding and energy, and I will give them jobs and stuff. If we're doing breakouts, for example, if it comes to something like that, it needs that kind of thing, I'll pick on the people that I think are really going to shine in that area and coach them a bit about how to do it. So that the impact is, so it's already edging itself into their culture. It's not just a consultant coming in and consulting and then delivering a piece of work. It's I'm basically infecting them like a virus.
Yeah, I was about to say, but maybe not the right thing in the moment.
No, I know,
Oh, that's awesome. So it's really helping them to do it themselves and kind of bringing that into the business, so that you're kind of organizing that you're out as soon as possible.
Yeah. And what, as naturally innovative people, it's quite difficult for us to sit on our hands when we can see an obvious opportunity. I definitely can. I'm always going to think of things, and you can employ me, and I'll come in and I'll talk to you, and I'll go, right, you can do this, and you can do that, and you can do all the things, and I can be employed to be that 100%. But like I say, I don't necessarily want to. I'll take your money, thank you very much, and I'll do that, and it will be really, paradigm shifting. But what I want to create is independency, not dependency, ultimately.
Yeah, that's great. So, due to your battery topics, looping this to an end, because I think we're at a point where we understand how you think, how you work with your clients.
Yeah.
Going to a key question I ask everyone who is being on this show and going forward as well. Can you describe your dream client?
My dream client's personality as a business is they're brave, but they're diligent. They are they're a bit sexy, but they're also very they're very on it. They do the things they say they're going to do, and there's that whole innovation thing about expansive thinking and reductive thinking. They're able to do both. They see the power in both. They know that when you're trying to get something done, the last thing you need is someone going, oh, I've got another idea. And equally, when you're trying to have ideas, the last thing you need is someone going, oh, don't have any money, or we tried that before and it didn't work. Do you know what I mean? They whether they're aware of it or not, they live that kind of thinking, because you can go anywhere with any size client in any industry as long as they've got that. And I'd say that the largest part of my initial work is to sniff out whether they've got the nubs of that kind of energy, and then encourage it and keep giving it permission to thrive and have clarity. You know that as well as I do, that in order for innovation to really fly, you have to have discipline.
Yeah.
In order to be really free, you've got to have somebody who's going, this is the brief. This is the brief.
Awesome. We made it, including the battery time.
Did we? Oh, maybe
Yes.
it's going to go any minute. I can just see it.
So, Doug, thank you very much for being on the live show. I would love to invite you to a future session where we do a second round and a bit deeper one. But I think it's a very, very good live show. And thank you very much for you, and for everyone who is still listening live or listening to the recordings later. Thank you very much for listening. Go to the heitlandinnovation.com. Let me just throw the banner up. Innovation culture coding / innovation culture coding. You will find everything about Doug, the videos, the audio version later on, different clips as well, and important, a link to him as well, where you can engage him.
Thanks,
Of
James.
course, to work for you if you want to,
Yeah.
or even just chatting. That's also
no,
fine,
that
guess.
other one. That other one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just love to have those lovely informal conversations. It's not about sales. It's about, let's just have that conversation. It's really great.
Awesome. Doug, thank you very much. And for everyone
My
who is
pleasure.
listening to this, see you in the next live show or podcast. Thank you very much for dialing in, and see you.